When brilliant physics student Shirley Lawrence discovers NASA's catastrophic calculation error that could doom the Mars mission, her racist professor Dr. Thomas Robinson buries her findings until the world discovers the truth. Hi, my beautiful family. Let me begin with a prayer straight from the heart. Dear God, please bless every soul watching this video. Fill their lives with peace, joy, and endless love. Amen. Welcome back, my family. You are not just viewers. You are my light during the dark days, and my reason to keep going. To all new family members, welcome to the family. Please subscribe to the channel and introduce yourself in the comments. I truly want to know more about you. My beloved family, every story I bring is not just words, it is my sweat, my sleepless nights, and my sacrifice. When you leave early, it cuts deep as if my hard work is unseen and my voice unheard. Please stay till the end. I love you. Now let's begin the story. The lecture hall buzzed with the restless energy of 70 undergraduate students, but Shirley Lawrence sat perfectly still in the back row, her dark eyes fixed on Professor Dr. Thomas Robinson as he droned through another derivation of orbital mechanics. Her notebook was filled not with his recycled equations, but with her own calculations, elegant, precise, and revolutionary. Miss Lawrence, Dr. Robinson's voice cut through the air like a blade. Since you seem so absorbed in your own work, perhaps you'd like to share your thoughts on the Hohmann transfer calculations I just presented? Shirley's heart hammered, but she stood slowly. At 19, she was the youngest student in the advanced astrophysics program at Stanford, and the only black woman. Every eye in the room turned to her. Actually, Professor, she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands, I think there might be an issue with the baseline calculations NASA is using for the Mars mission trajectory. A ripple of whispers spread through the classroom. Dr. Robinson's pale face flushed red. Excuse me? Shirley pulled out her tablet, fingers dancing across the screen. I've been reviewing the publicly available data from the Artemis program integration with Mars mission planning. There's a cumulative error in the gravitational assist calculations that compounds over the 260-day journey. By my calculations, the spacecraft would miss Mars by approximately 47,000 kilometers. The room fell dead silent. Dr. Robinson's lips twisted into a condescending smile. Miss Lawrence, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but NASA employs thousands of the world's brightest minds. The idea that an undergraduate student could identify an error that escaped their notice is, frankly, absurd. But Professor, if you just look at the data, that's enough. His voice boomed across the lecture hall. Class dismissed. Miss Lawrence, please see me after. As students filed out, shooting curious glances her way, Shirley remained standing, her tablet clutched against her chest. Her roommate Maya caught her eye and mouthed, You okay? Shirley nodded, though her stomach churned with anxiety. When the last student left, Dr. Robinson approached her desk, his footsteps echoing in the empty hall. At 52, he was a man accustomed to deference, his silver hair perfectly styled, his reputation in astrophysics unquestionable. Miss Lawrence, he began, his voice deceptively calm, I want to be very clear about something. This university has standards. Academic integrity is paramount. Shirley's brow furrowed. I'm sorry, Professor, I don't understand. Your little performance today, claiming to have found errors in NASA's work, it reeks of attention-seeking behavior. I've seen students like you before, trying to make a name for themselves by manufacturing controversy. The words hit her like a physical blow. Students like me? Dr. Robinson's smile never wavered, but his eyes grew cold. Students who believe they're entitled to recognition without putting in the real work. The kind who think diversity programs entitle them to make grandiose claims. Shirley's hands began to shake. Professor, this has nothing to do with. I'm going to give you one chance, he interrupted. Admit that this was a misguided attempt to gain attention, and we'll forget this ever happened. Continue down this path, and I'll have to question whether you belong in this program at all." For a moment, Shirley couldn't breathe. The numbers in her head were crystal clear. She'd checked them dozens of times, run them through multiple verification programs. The error was real, and it was catastrophic. "Professor," she said quietly, "what if I'm right?" His expression hardened. "You're not." As Shirley packed her things with trembling hands, her tablet buzzed with a notification. An encrypted message from an anonymous account. "We know what you found. We've been watching. Meet me at the observatory tonight at 11 p.m. if you want to know the truth about what NASA is really hiding." A friend. Shirley's dorm room felt suffocating as she paced between her bed and desk, the mysterious message glowing on her tablet screen. Maya sat cross-legged on her own bed, watching her roommate with growing concern. "You're not seriously considering this, are you?" Maya asked, gesturing at the tablet. "This screams stranger danger in neon letters." Shirley stopped pacing and turned to face her friend. "Maya, what if this person knows something? What if Robinson is part of something bigger? Or what if it's Robinson himself, setting you up?" Maya's voice carried the weight of experience. She'd seen too many bright students crushed by the system. "Think about it, Shirley. You challenge him publicly, and suddenly you get a mysterious message? That's not coincidence." But Shirley's mind was racing beyond Maya's warnings. She'd spent the last 3 hours running her calculations again, triple-checking every variable, every constant. The error was undeniable, and if NASA launched with these flawed trajectories, it wouldn't just be a failed mission. It would be a catastrophic waste of human life and resources. "I have to go," she whispered. At 10:47 p.m., Shirley slipped through the shadows toward the university observatory. The old brick building loomed against the star-scattered sky, its dome silhouetted like a sleeping giant. Her heart hammered as she approached the side entrance, exactly as the message had instructed. The door creaked open before she could knock. "Shirley Lawrence." The voice belonged to a woman mid-40s, with prematurely silver hair and intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She wore a NASA jacket that looked well-worn and authentic. Shirley nodded, not trusting her voice. "I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez. I worked for NASA's Mission Planning Division." She gestured for Shirley to enter. "We need to talk." Inside the observatory, surrounded by telescopes and star charts, Dr. Vasquez pulled up a holographic display that made Shirley's tablet look primitive. 3 months ago," Dr. Vasquez began, "I identified the same error you found today. The gravitational assist calculations contain a systematic flaw that's been propagated through every Mars mission simulation for the past 2 years." Shirley's breath caught. "You found it too?" "I found it, reported it, and was told to bury it." Dr. Vasquez's voice cracked with emotion. "When I insisted on running verification tests, I was suddenly reassigned to special projects, which is NASA's polite way of putting you in professional exile." Dr. Vasquez manipulated the holographic display, showing a series of internal NASA communications. "But here's what I discovered that you haven't yet. The error isn't accidental. Someone deliberately introduced flawed parameters into the baseline calculations 6 months ago." Shirley stared at the data, her brilliant mind processing the implications. "Sabotage. Corporate sabotage," Dr. Vasquez confirmed. Meridian Aerospace, NASA's primary contractor for Mars mission components, stands to gain an additional $2.3 billion if the mission fails and they have to redesign the systems. The person who introduced these errors? Dr. James Morrison, Meridian's former chief engineer, who now sits on NASA's Mars Mission Advisory Board. The room seemed to spin around Shirley. "But that's criminal conspiracy. People could die. For astronauts, to be precise." Dr. Vasquez's voice was grim. "And when I tried to expose this, Morrison used his connections to have me silenced. But you're not bound by NASA's internal politics. You're free to speak." Shirley's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop digging or face the consequences. Last warning. Dr. Vasquez saw her expression change. They're already watching you, aren't they? Before Shirley could respond, footsteps echoed outside the observatory. Dr. Vasquez quickly shut down the holographic display and grabbed Shirley's arm. There's a service tunnel that leads to the physics building, she whispered urgently. If anything happens to me, everything you need is in this drive. She pressed a small device into Shirley's palm. The world needs to know the truth. The observatory door burst open, and 3 figures in dark suits entered, led by a man Shirley recognized from news photos, Dr. James Morrison himself. His cold blue eyes swept the room before settling on the 2 women. Dr. Vasquez, he said smoothly, you've been a very difficult woman to find. And you must be Miss Lawrence, the ambitious young student causing such a stir. Shirley's hand closed around the drive, her mind racing. These weren't just academic politics anymore. This was dangerous. Mr. Morrison. Dr. Vasquez stepped protectively in front of Shirley. Still cleaning up your messes personally, I see. Morrison smiled, but it never reached his eyes. There are no messes, Elena. Just unfortunate misunderstandings that need correction. Miss Lawrence, you've stumbled into something far beyond your comprehension. Walk away now, and you can continue your studies without incident. And if I don't? Shirley's voice was steadier than she felt. Then you'll discover that academic careers can be very fragile things. A few words in the right ears about plagiarism, about unstable behavior, about the pressures that sometimes overwhelm promising students. He let the threat hang in the air. Just as the situation seemed hopeless, Dr. Vasquez pressed a hidden button on her watch. Suddenly, the observatory's emergency lighting flashed on, and an automated voice announced, "Emergency protocols activated. Campus security has been notified. All personnel remain in place." In the chaos of flashing lights and confused shouts, Dr. Vasquez shoved Shirley toward the service tunnel. "Run. Get that information to someone who can help." As Shirley fled through the narrow tunnel, she heard Dr. Vasquez's voice one last time. The truth always finds a way. Shirley emerged from the tunnel into the physics building, her heart pounding and the drive clutched in her sweating palm. But as she turned the corner toward the exit, she found herself face to face with Professor Robinson, flanked by 2 campus security officers. "Miss Lawrence," he said with false concern, "we've been looking for you. There are some very serious allegations about your conduct tonight." Shirley's mind raced as she faced Professor Robinson and the security officers in the dimly lit physics building hallway. The drive felt like it was burning a hole in her palm, and she quickly slipped it into her jacket pocket. "Professor Robinson," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, "I was just breaking into university facilities after hours?" Robinson's voice carried false concern, but his eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "Officer Martinez, Officer Chen, Miss Lawrence was reported trespassing in the observatory tonight. There are also concerns about her mental state." Officer Martinez, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, looked uncomfortable. "Professor, she's just a student. Maybe we should." "Officer, this young woman has been making increasingly erratic claims about NASA, disrupting my classes, and now engaging in criminal trespassing." Robinson stepped closer to Shirley, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "I'm afraid Miss Lawrence may be having some sort of breakdown. These things happen when students are under pressure they can't handle." Shirley felt the walls closing in. "That's not true. I have evidence of corporate sabotage, of people trying to." "Evidence?" Robinson's laugh was sharp and cruel. "Officer Martinez, you see what I mean? Paranoid delusions about conspiracies. I think Miss Lawrence needs professional help." Officer Chen shifted uncomfortably. "What kind of evidence, miss?" Hope flickered in Shirley's chest. "I have documented proof that someone deliberately sabotaged NASA's Mars mission calculations. People's lives are at stake." "Enough!" Robinson's mask of concern slipped completely. "Officers, I'm formally requesting that Miss Lawrence be taken for psychiatric evaluation. She's clearly a danger to herself and others." Just as Officer Martinez reached for his radio, a new voice echoed through the hallway. "That won't be necessary, officers." Everyone turned to see a tall black woman in a sharp business suit striding toward them, her heels clicking authoritatively on the polished floor. Behind her walked two men in dark suits, not the threatening kind Shirley had encountered earlier, but the professional kind that radiated federal authority. "Agent Victoria Hayes, FBI Cybercrimes Division," the woman announced, flashing her badge. "Agents Thompson and Williams. We're here about a matter of national security." Professor Robinson's face went pale. "FBI? I don't understand." "Professor Thomas Robinson," Agent Hayes continued, her voice cutting through his protests, "you're being investigated for conspiracy to commit fraud against the United States government, specifically in relation to NASA contracts." The hallway fell silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Agent Hayes turned to Shirley, her expression softening slightly. "Miss Lawrence, we've been monitoring the situation since Dr. Elena Vasquez contacted us 3 days ago. She's been working as an undercover informant to help us build our case." Shirley's legs nearly gave out with relief. "Dr. Vasquez she's okay?" "She's safe," Agent Hayes confirmed. "And thanks to her wire recording tonight, we now have Morrison and his associates on tape threatening federal witnesses." Robinson's face cycled through confusion, anger, and finally, desperate calculation. "This is ridiculous. I have no connection to any conspiracy. I'm just trying to maintain academic standards." "Professor Robinson," Agent Thompson stepped forward, pulling out his phone and playing an audio recording. Robinson's own voice filled the hallway. "The Lawrence girl is getting too close. Morrison wants her discredited completely. Make sure she understands the consequences of continuing this path." The blood drained from Robinson's face as he recognized his own voice from a phone conversation he'd had earlier that evening. "You see, Professor," Agent Hayes explained, "Dr. Vasquez wasn't the only one wearing a wire tonight. We've been building this case for months, tracking the money trail from Meridian Aerospace through a network of compromised academics and NASA officials. You took $250,000 to silence Miss Lawrence and destroy her credibility." Robinson's composure cracked completely. "You don't understand. I have a family, a reputation. Morrison said it was just about protecting NASA's image, preventing panic. By covering up sabotage that could kill astronauts." Shirley's voice rang out clearly, no longer trembling with fear, but vibrating with righteous anger. "You were willing to destroy my life to protect a conspiracy that could murder 4 people?" The 2 campus security officers stepped back, clearly wanting no part of what was unfolding. Agent Williams moved behind Robinson. "Professor Thomas Robinson, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, witness intimidation, and conspiracy against the United States. You have the right to remain silent." As the Miranda rights continued, Robinson's eyes found Shirley's. For a moment, she saw not the intimidating professor who had tried to crush her dreams, but a broken man who had sold his soul for money and status. "I never wanted anyone to get hurt," he whispered. "But you were willing to let it happen," Shirley replied quietly. "That's the difference between us, Professor. I was willing to risk everything to save lives. You were willing to risk lives to save yourself." As Agent Williams led Robinson away in handcuffs, Agent Hayes approached Shirley with a smile. "Miss Lawrence, there's someone who'd like to speak with you." She handed Shirley a secure phone. The voice on the other end made her knees weak. "Miss Lawrence? This is Administrator Janet Richardson, NASA. I understand we owe you a significant debt of gratitude." Shirley found her voice. "Administrator Richardson, I just wanted to prevent a tragedy. And you have. Thanks to your discovery and courage, we've identified and corrected the sabotage. But more than that, Your original calculations have shown us 3 additional optimization opportunities that could reduce the Mars mission timeline by 37 days. Miss Lawrence, how would you feel about spending your summer as a paid intern with our Mars mission planning division? The hallway spun around Shirley as the implications hit her. Not only had she been vindicated, but NASA was offering her the opportunity of a lifetime. Yes, she managed. Yes, I would be honored. As she handed the phone back to Agent Hayes, Shirley caught sight of herself in the building's glass doors. The frightened girl who had discovered the error seemed like a lifetime ago. In her place stood a young woman who had faced down corruption, intimidation, and conspiracy, and won. But she knew this was just the beginning. 6 months later, Shirley Lawrence walked through the gleaming corridors of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, her visitor badge replaced by a permanent ID that read Dr. Shirley Lawrence, Senior Mars Mission Analyst. At 20, she had become the youngest person ever to hold such a position, but the journey to get there had been anything but smooth. The first weeks after Robinson's arrest had been a media whirlwind. Student Genius Exposes NASA Conspiracy dominated headlines, and Shirley found herself thrust into a spotlight she never wanted. Universities across the country offered her transfer opportunities with full scholarships. Tech companies dangled 7-figure starting salaries. But NASA's offer had been different. It wasn't just about her potential, but about her proven courage and integrity. Lawrence. The voice belonged to Dr. Michael Chun, NASA's Mars mission director, a man whose reputation for brilliance was matched only by his reputation for impossible standards. Conference room now. We've got a problem. Shirley hurried after him, her mind already racing through the possibilities. Over the past months, she'd helped identify and correct 17 separate instances of sabotage in the Mars mission systems, earning her both respect and enemies within the aerospace community. The conference room was packed with NASA's top minds, their faces grim. On the massive display screen, telemetry data scrolled in ominous red numbers. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dr. Chun announced, "meet our newest crisis." The Meridian Aerospace situation was just the tip of the iceberg. Someone has been systematically compromising space programs globally. Dr. Sarah Kim, the lead systems engineer, pulled up a world map dotted with red X's. European Space Agency's Jupiter probe, navigation failure. Japan's lunar lander, communication blackout. China's Mars rover, complete system shutdown. In each case, the failures trace back to components or software provided by subsidiaries of the same parent company. Shirley studied the data, her brilliant mind connecting patterns others had missed. "Titan Industries," she whispered. All eyes turned to her. Dr. Chun nodded grimly. "Exactly. The parent company of Meridian Aerospace, and about 50 other aerospace contractors worldwide. They've been playing a long game, sabotaging missions to create dependency on their solutions." "But why?" asked Dr. Martinez, a veteran mission planner. "The financial gain can't be worth the risk." Shirley stood up, moving to the display screen. "It's not just about money. Look at the pattern of failures." She began highlighting different missions on the map. Every successful space program represents a country's technological independence. But if those programs fail, nations become dependent on a single source for space technology. Dr. Chen's eyes widened. "You're talking about technological colonialism." "Exactly. Whoever controls space technology in the next decade will control everything: communications, navigation, resource extraction, defense systems. Titan Industries isn't just trying to corner a market. They're trying to control humanity's future beyond Earth." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Dr. Kim broke the silence. "There's something else. Our informants suggest that Titan's next target isn't just another mission. It's the International Space Station itself." Shirley felt her blood run cold. "How many people are on the ISS right now?" 7. Dr. Chen replied quietly. And if Titan succeeds in sabotaging the life support systems during the next supply mission? He didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the room understood that they weren't just talking about mission failures anymore. They were talking about murder on a scale that would traumatize the entire world and set back space exploration by decades. Dr. Chen's secure phone buzzed, and his face went ashen as he read the message. We've got another problem. The supply mission launches in 72 hours, and we just discovered that 3 key components were manufactured by Titan subsidiaries. If we delay the launch, the ISS crew runs out of oxygen in 5 days. Shirley's mind raced. We need to inspect those components, but there's no time for a complete analysis, Dr. Kim interrupted. Each component has thousands of parts, millions of lines of code. We'd need weeks to verify everything. Not if we know what to look for, Shirley said quietly, her voice gaining strength. I've been studying Titan's sabotage patterns for months. They have a signature, a specific way they introduce vulnerabilities that look like normal component variations, but create cascade failures under specific conditions. Dr. Chen leaned forward. Can you identify those patterns in 72 hours? Shirley looked around the room at the faces of people who had become not just colleagues, but mentors and friends. These were the brightest minds on Earth, and they were looking to her, a 20-year-old who 6 months ago was just a student afraid to speak up in class. I can do better than that, she said, her voice filled with quiet determination. I can fix them. As the room erupted in urgent planning, Shirley's personal phone buzzed with a message that made her blood freeze. Drop the investigation, or everyone you care about will pay the price. We know where your grandmother lives. We know Maya's schedule. Last warning. Titan. Her hands trembled as she stared at the screen. They weren't just threatening her anymore. They were threatening the people she loved most in the world. Dr. Chen noticed her expression. Shirley? What is it? For a moment she hesitated. 6 months ago, she would have been paralyzed by fear. The old Shirley would have backed down, would have found a way to rationalize staying quiet. But as she looked around the room at her colleagues, as she thought about the 7 astronauts counting on them, as she remembered the moment she had first chosen courage over comfort, she made her decision. They just threatened my family, she said, showing Dr. Chen the message. Which means we're getting close to something they really don't want us to find. Dr. Chen's expression hardened. We'll get your family protection immediately. No, Shirley said, her voice growing stronger. We do better than that. We finish this. All of it. Titan Industries has been terrorizing people, killing dreams, and threatening lives for too long. It's time to end their reign. She walked to the whiteboard and began writing equations at lightning speed. 72 hours to save 7 lives and expose a global conspiracy. Challenge accepted. Dear viewers, Shirley is facing her biggest challenge yet, with lives hanging in the balance and her loved ones under threat. Do you think she has what it takes to stop Titan Industries? Or has she finally bitten off more than she can chew? Drop your thoughts below. The next 48 hours blurred together in a haze of caffeine, calculations, and mounting pressure. Shirley hadn't left the NASA facility, surviving on vending machine food and 2-hour power naps on the conference room couch. Her grandmother and Maya had been moved to a secure FBI safe house, but knowing they were in danger because of her choices weighed heavily on her mind. The secure lab where they'd brought the 3 suspicious components looked like a high-tech autopsy room. Shirley stood over the oxygen recycling unit, her eyes burning from exhaustion as she traced circuit pathways with a microscope probe. There, she whispered, her voice hoarse. Dr. Kim, look at this. Dr. Kim leaned over the microscope, adjusting the focus. I see it. That resistor, it's rated for normal operating conditions, but under the specific temperature and humidity conditions of the ISS during a supply docking, it'll degrade and create a feedback loop that shuts down the entire oxygen system. Shirley straightened up, rubbing her tired eyes. It's brilliant, actually. Diabolical, but brilliant. The failure would look completely random. Dr. Chun, who had been coordinating with Mission Control, approached their workstation. That's 2 components down, 1 to go. How much time do we need to fabricate replacements? 18 hours minimum, Dr. Kim replied. But the launch window? 23 hours and counting, Dr. Chun finished grimly. We're cutting it impossibly close. Shirley moved to the 3rd component, a communication relay that connected the ISS to ground control. This one was more complex, with layers of circuit boards and thousands of lines of embedded software code. As she began her analysis, her secure phone buzzed. Shirley, her grandmother's voice, shaky but determined, came through the speaker. Sweetheart, are you all right? These FBI agents won't tell me much, but I know you're in some kind of trouble. Shirley's eyes filled with tears she couldn't afford to shed. I'm okay, Grandma. I'm trying to save some people. Of course you are, baby. That's who you've always been. Even when you were little, you couldn't stand to see anyone hurting. Her grandmother's voice grew stronger. Your grandfather would be so proud. Remember what he used to say. Shirley smiled through her exhaustion. When the work is important, the cost doesn't matter. That's right. Now you stop worrying about this old woman and go save those people. I didn't raise you to back down from doing what's right. After ending the call, Shirley felt renewed energy coursing through her veins. She dove back into the communication relay analysis with fierce determination. 6 hours later, as she was deep in the component's software architecture, Shirley discovered something that made her blood run cold. Dr. Chun, Dr. Kim, everyone, get over here right now. The urgency in her voice brought the entire team running. This isn't just about sabotaging the ISS, she said, her voice trembling with the magnitude of her discovery. Look at this code. On her screen, she displayed a complex software routine buried deep in the communication relay's programming. This code isn't designed to cause a system failure. It's designed to take control of the ISS's navigation systems and send it on a collision course with the Chinese space station. Dr. Chun went pale. That would trigger an international incident. Accusations, blame. Wars, Dr. Kim whispered. It would start wars. Space wars. Shirley nodded grimly. And in the chaos, Titan Industries would position itself as the only company capable of rebuilding everyone's space programs. They're not just trying to corner the market, they're trying to destroy all competition and rule space through manufactured conflict. Just as the team was processing this revelation, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Emergency lights bathed everything in red, and Dr. Chen's radio crackled to life. Dr. Chen, this is Security Chief Rodriguez. We have a situation. Armed individuals have breached the perimeter. They're heading for your lab. Through the reinforced glass windows, Shirley could see black-clad figures moving through the corridors with military precision. These weren't corporate executives making threats. These were professionals sent to eliminate witnesses. How did they get through NASA security? Dr. Kim asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Inside help, Dr. Chun replied grimly. Titan's corruption runs deeper than we thought. The lead figure reached their lab door and began attaching something to the electronic lock. Shirley realized they had maybe 30 seconds before the intruders broke through. The server, she shouted, racing to the computer terminal. I need to upload everything, all our findings, all the evidence, to every major news outlet and space agency in the world. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as the door behind them began to spark and smoke. 20 seconds. 15. Upload progress. 67%. The computer announced in its maddeningly calm voice. The door burst open, just as the progress bar hit 100%. Shirley spun around to face 6 armed figures led by a man she recognized from surveillance photos. Marcus Titan himself, CEO of Titan Industries. Miss Lawrence, he said in a voice like silk over steel. You've caused me considerable inconvenience. And you've tried to murder astronauts and start international wars, Shirley replied, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. I'd say we're not even close to even. Titan smiled coldly. Actually, we are exactly even. Because in 30 seconds, a very tragic accident is going to occur in this laboratory. An experimental component will malfunction, causing an explosion that kills everyone present. The evidence of your supposed discoveries will be dismissed as the desperate fabrications of disturbed individuals. As Titan's men raised their weapons, the lights suddenly cut out, plunging the lab into darkness. Emergency power kicked in seconds later, casting everything in an eerie green glow, but in that brief moment of confusion, everything changed. Dr. Chun and his team had vanished, leaving only Shirley facing Titan's mercenaries. But she wasn't afraid anymore. In fact, she was smiling. You're wondering where everyone went, she said conversationally. The thing is, Mr. Titan, NASA doesn't just employ brilliant scientists. We also employ brilliant security experts. The lab doors slammed shut with a finality that echoed through the room. Titan spun around as he realized they were trapped. The entire facility has been locked down, Shirley continued. Every door, every exit, every ventilation shaft. Your inside help? Already in federal custody. And that upload I just completed? It didn't just go to news outlets. She pointed to the screens around the room, which were flickering to life with images of military bases, government facilities, and law enforcement agencies around the world. It went to everyone. Every intelligence agency, every space program, every law enforcement organization on the planet now has complete documentation of your conspiracy. There's nowhere left to run, Mr. Titan. Nowhere left to hide. The sound of federal agents breaching the outer doors echoed through the corridors, growing closer by the second. For the first time, Shirley saw fear in Marcus Titan's eyes. The federal agents burst through the lab's outer security doors with tactical precision, their entry coordinated by Agent Hayes, who Shirley recognized from that fateful night at the observatory 6 months ago. But Marcus Titan wasn't finished yet. Miss Lawrence, he said quietly, his voice carrying a dangerous calm that made Shirley's skin crawl. You've won this round, I'll give you that. But did you really think I'd come here without a contingency plan? He pulled out a small device that looked like a modified smartphone. This transmits on a frequency that bypasses all of NASA's security protocols. One button, and the sabotaged components already aboard the ISS supply rocket activate early. Those 7 astronauts die in exactly. He glanced at his watch. 47 minutes when their oxygen systems fail. Dr. Chen's voice crackled through the intercom. Shirley, we can see what's happening. Don't listen to him. We replaced those components. Did you? Titan's smile was arctic. All of them? Because I've been planning this for 3 years, Miss Lawrence. You found the obvious sabotage, the decoys I wanted you to find. The Rayol kill switches were hidden in components you never even examined. Shirley felt her blood turn to ice. You're bluffing. Am I? Titan touched a control on his device, and one of the lab monitors switched to a live feed from the ISS. Commander Sarah Walsh, Mission Specialist David Kim, Engineer Rebecca Martinez. I can tell you their life stories, their families, their dreams. Are you willing to bet their lives that I'm lying? Through the reinforced glass, Shirley could see Agent Hayes coordinating with a SWAT team, but they were holding back, clearly aware that Titan held some kind of leverage. What do you want? Shirley asked, though she already knew the answer. A trade, Titan replied smoothly. You for them. You come with me, and I'll transmit the abort codes that will keep those astronauts alive. You stay here with your federal friends, and you get to watch 7 heroes suffocate in space while the world blames NASA's incompetence. Dr. Kim's voice came through the intercom, tight with desperation. Mission Control confirms unusual readings from the ISS life support systems. Something's wrong. but we can't identify the source. 43 minutes. Shirley closed her eyes, her brilliant mind racing through the possibilities. Could she trust Titan to honor his word? Could she trust that the federal agents would be able to protect the astronauts without her sacrifice? There's a third option, she said quietly, opening her eyes to meet Titan's gaze directly. You give me the abort codes, and I'll give you something even more valuable. Titan raised an eyebrow. And what could a 20-year-old girl possibly have that I want more than my freedom? Shirley smiled, not the frightened expression of a cornered student, but the confident look of someone who had finally seen the entire chessboard. The complete technical specifications for NASA's new quantum communication system. The one that will make every existing satellite network obsolete within 5 years. The room went silent. Even through the intercom, she could hear Dr. Chen's sharp intake of breath. That technology is classified beyond anything you've had access to, Titan said, but his eyes betrayed his interest. Is it? Shirley moved to one of the lab computers and began typing rapidly. I've spent 6 months here, Mr. Titan. 6 months with unlimited access to NASA's most sensitive projects. I've seen things that would make your head spin. She turned the monitor toward him, displaying what appeared to be genuine quantum encryption protocols and hardware specifications. This technology is worth $1 trillion and represents a 20-year leap forward in space communications. Give me those abort codes, and it's yours. Titan stared at the screen for a long moment, his corporate instincts warring with his survival needs. Finally, he nodded and began entering commands on his device. ISS abort codes transmitted, he announced. Those astronauts will live. Now keep your end of the bargain. Shirley's fingers danced across the keyboard, appearing to transfer the classified files to an encrypted drive. As the progress bar reached completion, she pulled the drive from the computer and tossed it to Titan. There, she said. Everything you asked for. Titan caught the drive and plugged it into his own device, quickly scanning the contents. His eyes widened as he saw terabytes of what appeared to be legitimate classified data. Excellent, Miss Lawrence. You've just bought your friends' lives and made me the richest man in. His words cut off as his device screen flashed red. Virus detected. System compromised. All data encrypted. Shirley's smile widened. Did I mention that I've also been studying cybersecurity? That drive doesn't contain NASA's secrets, Mr. Titan. It contains a virus that just transmitted the location of every Titan Industries black site, every offshore account, every classified operation to law enforcement agencies worldwide. Titan's face went purple with rage. You little genius. Shirley finished. Yes, I am. And unlike you, I use my intelligence to save lives, not destroy them. The lab doors burst open as federal agents flooded in, but Titan wasn't finished. In his desperation, he lunged for Shirley with a hidden blade, his corporate facade finally crumbling to reveal the murderous criminal beneath. But as he closed the distance, Shirley did something unexpected. She didn't run. Instead, she stepped forward to meet his charge, and in one fluid motion, used the self-defense training NASA had provided all their staff to redirect his momentum and send him crashing into a bank of computer equipment. As Titan lay stunned among the sparking electronics, Agent Hayes stepped forward with handcuffs. Marcus Titan, you're under arrest for conspiracy, attempted murder, terrorism, and about 50 other charges we'll figure out once we process all the evidence Miss Lawrence just provided. But Shirley was already at the communications panel, speaking directly to the ISS. Commander Walsh, this is Shirley Lawrence at Mission Control. Status report, please. The response came through crystal clear. Miss Lawrence, whatever you did down there, it worked. All systems nominal. The crew is safe. As cheers erupted through the facility, Shirley felt her legs give out from exhaustion and relief. But strong hands caught her, Dr. Chen and Dr. Kim, their faces beaming with pride. How did you know the virus would work? Dr. Chen asked. Shirley managed a tired laugh. I didn't. But I knew that if I was wrong, we'd all be in the same boat anyway. Sometimes you have to risk everything on being right. Through the lab windows, she could see news vans arriving, reporters setting up cameras, and the first hints of dawn breaking over the California horizon. The scared girl who had discovered an error in a lecture hall 6 months ago was gone forever. In her place stood a young woman who had just saved 7 lives and exposed a global conspiracy. But as she watched Marcus Titan being led away in chains, Shirley knew this victory was just the beginning. 3 weeks later, Shirley stood in the East Room of the White House, wearing a navy blue dress that her grandmother had insisted was fit for meeting presidents. The room buzzed with the world's most influential leaders, heads of state, Nobel laureates, space agency directors, and journalists from every corner of the globe. President Maria Santos approached the podium, her smile genuine as she looked directly at Shirley. Ladies and gentlemen, we gather today not just to honor courage, but to celebrate the power of truth in the face of overwhelming corruption. The past weeks had been a whirlwind that still felt surreal to Shirley. The Titan Industries scandal had exploded across international headlines when the virus she'd planted revealed the full scope of their operations. Sabotage attempts on 43 different space missions across 6 continents, bribery networks reaching into 12 governments, and assassination plots against 17 scientists and engineers who had gotten too close to the truth. Miss Shirley Lawrence, President Santos continued, at 20 years old, has shown us that heroism isn't about age, gender, or background. It's about choosing to do what's right when everything is at stake. In the front row, Shirley's grandmother dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Next to her sat Maya, who had flown in from Stanford, where she was now studying on a full scholarship. A scholarship endowed by an anonymous donor who Shirley suspected was Administrator Richardson. The Presidential Medal of Freedom, President Santos announced, our nation's highest civilian honor, is awarded to individuals who have made exceptionally meritorious contributions to the security or national interests of the United States, to world peace, or to cultural or other significant public or private endeavors. As President Santos placed the medal around Shirley's neck, she whispered, "The world needs more people like you, Miss Lawrence. Thank you for showing us what courage looks like." After the ceremony, Shirley found herself surrounded by reporters, but the questions were different now. Instead of asking about the conspiracy, they wanted to know about her future, her plans, her dreams. "Miss Lawrence," called out Rebecca Chen from the Washington Post, "NASA has offered you a permanent position as the youngest department head in their history. MIT has offered you a full professorship. SpaceX wants you to lead their Mars colonization program. How do you choose?" Shirley smiled, remembering the terrified girl who had once been afraid to speak up in Professor Robinson's class. "The truth is, I've already chosen. But first, there's something more important I need to do." Later that evening, at the reception, Shirley was approached by a woman she didn't immediately recognize. Elegant, mid-30s, with kind eyes and a warm smile. "Miss Lawrence, I'm Dr. Amanda Foster. I work for the UN's new Space Security Council." Shirley shook her hand, puzzled. "I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that organization." Dr. Foster's smile widened. "That's because it was created last week, specifically in response to the Titan Industries crisis. The UN Security Council realized that space-based threats require international coordination. They've asked me to extend an invitation." She handed Shirley an elegant envelope bearing the UN seal. "The Secretary General would like to offer you the position of Director of Global Space Security. You'd be responsible for overseeing international cooperation to prevent another Titan Industries situation." Shirley stared at the envelope, her mind reeling. "But I'm not even 21 yet." "You're the person who saved 7 lives and prevented an international war," Dr. Foster replied gently. "Age is just a number. Vision, courage, and integrity, Those are what matter. And you've proven you have all three. Before Shirley could respond, another familiar voice interrupted. She's also the person who's about to become very rich. Shirley turned to see Agent Hayes approaching with a legal-looking document. Miss Lawrence, the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, has finished processing the Titan Industries assets. As the primary whistleblower, you're entitled to a substantial reward from the recovered funds. She handed Shirley the document. The number at the bottom made Shirley's knees weak. $847 million. That's not possible, Shirley whispered. It's the standard 15% whistleblower reward from the $5.6 billion in criminal proceeds we've recovered so far, Agent Hayes explained. There will likely be more as we continue tracing Titan's hidden assets. Shirley sank into a nearby chair, overwhelmed. In the span of 6 months, she'd gone from a struggling student afraid of her racist professor to a national hero with nearly $1 billion and job offers from the most prestigious organizations in the world. Miss Lawrence, a gentle voice interrupted her spinning thoughts. She looked up to see Commander Sarah Walsh, the ISS commander whose life she had saved, standing nearby with a small girl who couldn't have been more than 8 years old. "This is my daughter Emma," Commander Walsh said, her voice thick with emotion. She wanted to meet the person who saved Mommy's life. Emma stepped forward shyly, holding something behind her back. "Miss Lawrence, I made you something." She revealed a hand-drawn picture of the International Space Station surrounded by stars, with 2 stick figures floating nearby. One labeled Mommy, and one labeled Hero Shirley. At the bottom, in a child's careful handwriting, "Thank you for keeping my mommy safe in space." Shirley felt tears streaming down her cheeks as she knelt to Emma's level. All the medals, all the money, all the job offers, none of it mattered compared to this moment. "Thank you, Emma," she whispered, hugging the little girl. "This is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever given me." As the evening continued, Shirley found herself standing alone on the White House balcony, looking up at the stars. The weight of all her choices, all her opportunities, all her responsibilities felt enormous. Her phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "Saw you on TV, superstar. Remember when you were afraid to speak up in class? Look at you now. Whatever you choose, I'm proud of you. But don't forget, the scared girl who found that first error is still part of who you are. She's the one who started this whole journey." Shirley smiled, clutching Emma's drawing against her chest. Maya was right. The frightened student and the global hero weren't different people. They were the same person who had simply chosen courage over comfort, truth over safety, principle over popularity. And now, for the first time since this all began, she knew exactly what she wanted to do with her future. 2 days after the White House ceremony, Shirley sat in a quiet corner of her grandmother's kitchen in Oakland, California. The Presidential Medal of Freedom lay on the worn wooden table between them, catching the morning sunlight that streamed through faded curtains. Her grandmother poured coffee into 2 mismatched mugs, the same ritual they'd shared since Shirley was 12 years old. "Baby girl," her grandmother said softly, settling into her chair with a slight wince that reminded Shirley she was 83 now. "You've got that look again." "What look?" "The same one you had when you were 7, and trying to figure out why the stars moved across the sky. Like your brain's working on something too big for words." Shirley smiled, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "Grandma, what would you do if you suddenly had the power to change everything? I mean everything. Education, space exploration, how the world handles science and technology." Her grandmother studied her with eyes that had seen the Jim Crow South, the civil rights movement, and 8 decades of change. "Honey, power's not about what you can change. It's about what you choose to protect." Before Shirley could respond, her phone rang. The caller ID showed Administrator Richardson from NASA. "Miss Lawrence," came the familiar voice. "I hope I'm not interrupting, but we have a situation. Are you somewhere you can speak freely?" Shirley stepped onto the back porch, her grandmother following with concerned eyes. "I'm here, Administrator. What's happening?" "We've been monitoring global space programs since the Titan revelations," Richardson said, her voice tense. "Shirley, we've found evidence of copycat organizations in Russia, China, and North Korea. The Titan model is being replicated. Create dependency through sabotage, then monopolize the solutions." Shirley felt her stomach drop. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough that the President is convening an emergency session of the National Security Council. Bad enough that 3 allied nations have requested immediate assistance with their compromised space programs. And bad enough that we need someone the international community trusts to coordinate the response." The weight of the implication settled on Shirley's shoulders. "You want me to take the UN position? I want you to save the world's space programs before this conspiracy spreads any further," Richardson replied bluntly. "Shirley, in 6 months you've become the most trusted voice in global space security. Leaders from 50 countries have personally requested your involvement in their investigations." After ending the call, Shirley found her grandmother waiting with a knowing look. "Big decision?" her grandmother asked. "The biggest," Shirley confirmed. "But Grandma, I keep thinking about something. All these opportunities, all this recognition. It's because I found one error and had the courage to speak up. But how many other students are out there right now, in classrooms like the one I was in, seeing things that others miss, but too afraid to speak?" Her grandmother's eyes lit up with understanding. "And what are you thinking of doing about that?" Instead of answering, Shirley pulled out her laptop and showed her grandmother a document she'd been working on in secret. "I've been drafting a proposal. What if I use the whistleblower money to create something that's never existed before?" The document was titled, "The Lawrence Institute for Scientific Integrity, a Global Network for Young Voices in Science." "Instead of taking any of these jobs," Shirley continued, her voice gaining strength, "what if I created an organization that finds and protects the next generation of scientists who see what others miss? Mobile labs that visit underserved schools. Scholarships for students who ask dangerous questions. Legal protection for young researchers who uncover inconvenient truths." Her grandmother read through the proposal, nodding slowly. "This is bigger than any single job, isn't it?" "It's bigger than me," Shirley agreed. "But maybe that's the point. Grandma, I can't be the only person who sees errors that others miss. There have to be hundreds, maybe thousands of brilliant minds out there who are being silenced or ignored because they don't fit the system's expectations." Her phone buzzed with a video call from Maya, who appeared on screen from her dorm room at Stanford, surrounded by physics textbooks and looking exhausted. "Shirley, perfect timing. You will not believe what I just found in Professor Martinez's quantum mechanics homework assignment." Maya held up a complex equation covered in red correction marks. "He marked my solution wrong, but I've checked it 12 times. His correct answer would create an energy paradox that violates the conservation of mass energy." Shirley stared at the screen, her heart racing as she recognized the familiar pattern. Another brilliant student. Another dismissed discovery. Another potential breakthrough being buried by academic arrogance. "Maya," she said quietly, "how would you feel about being the first student researcher at a new institute dedicated to scientific integrity?" "What are you talking about?" Shirley turned her laptop screen so Maya could see the proposal. As her friend's eyes widened, reading through the document, Shirley felt a certainty settle in her chest that was more powerful than any medal or job offer. "I'm talking about making sure that what happened to me, and what's happening to you right now, never happens to another student again." 3 hours later, Shirley stood in the backyard, on a conference call with the most powerful people in space exploration. President Santos, Administrator Richardson, UN Secretary-General Chen Wei, and directors from ESA, Roscosmos, and JAXA all waited for her answer. "Miss Lawrence," President Santos said, "we need your decision. The international situation is deteriorating rapidly. Shirley looked at her grandmother, who nodded encouragingly, then at her phone where Maya was still on video, and finally up at the blue sky, where, somewhere beyond the clouds, 7 astronauts lived and worked, because she had chosen courage over comfort. Madam President, Administrator Richardson, Secretary General Chun, distinguished colleagues, she began. 6 months ago, I was just a student who found an error. Today, you're offering me positions that would make me one of the most powerful people in space exploration. She paused, gathering her thoughts. But power concentrated in one person's hands is exactly how we got into this mess. Titan Industries succeeded because too much authority was centralized, too few people had oversight, and too many voices were silenced. Miss Lawrence, Secretary General Chun interjected, what are you proposing? Shirley smiled, feeling more confident than she ever had in her life. I'm proposing something revolutionary. Instead of me taking a position in your existing systems, what if we created a new system? What if the Lawrence Institute for Scientific Integrity became the world's first truly independent watchdog organization for global science? She outlined her vision, a network of young scientists protected by international treaty, with the authority to investigate and expose scientific misconduct anywhere in the world. Mobile labs, protected communications, legal immunity for whistleblowers, and most importantly, a direct line to the public that couldn't be censored or buried by corporate or government interests. The students I train won't work for any single country or company, she continued. They'll work for truth, for integrity, for the idea that science belongs to humanity, not to whoever has the most money or power. The silence on the call stretched for nearly a minute. Finally, President Santos spoke. Miss Lawrence, you're asking us to fund an organization that could potentially expose problems in our own programs. Yes, Madam President, I am. Because if we're doing something wrong, wouldn't you rather know about it before it becomes the next Titan Industries? Another long pause. Then Administrator Richardson's voice, filled with what sounded like pride. How much funding would you need? 5 years later, the auditorium at the Lawrence Institute for Scientific Integrity buzzed with nervous energy as 200 young scientists from 47 countries took their seats. Outside the gleaming building in Geneva, Switzerland, protesters held signs reading "Corporate Puppets," while supporters waved banners declaring, "Truth has no borders." Shirley Lawrence, now 25 and the youngest person ever to address a joint session of the UN General Assembly, stood at the podium wearing a simple black suit and the same confident smile that had carried her through 5 years of building something the world had never seen before. 5 years ago, she began, her voice carrying easily through the hall, I was a terrified student who found an error in NASA's calculations. Today, thanks to the work of brilliant young minds like yourselves, we've prevented 17 potential disasters, exposed corruption in 12 space agencies, and most importantly, saved 847 lives. In the front row, her grandmother sat beaming with pride, now 88 but still sharp as ever. Next to her, Maya, now Dr. Maya Patel, the Institute's Director of Quantum Research, took notes with the same intensity she'd shown in their Stanford dorm room. Dr. Sarah Kim from our Seoul laboratory, Shirley continued, gesturing to a young Korean woman in the audience, identified flawed metallurgy in satellite components that would have caused 3 communication satellites to explode in orbit. Dr. Ahmed Hossein from our Cairo office exposed a conspiracy to sabotage Egypt's first Mars rover. Dr. Isabella Santos from Sao Paulo uncovered evidence that a mining company was planning to detonate charges on the moon's far side without proper environmental impact studies. Each name brought applause, but Shirley noticed something more important. The proud, determined faces of young people who had learned that their voices mattered, that their discoveries could change the world. But today, Shirley said, her tone growing serious, We face our greatest challenge yet. The room fell silent as she gestured to the massive screen behind her, which displayed a complex orbital diagram. 3 days ago, Dr. Jennifer Walsh, daughter of ISS Commander Sarah Walsh, discovered something in her graduate research at Cambridge that should terrify us all. A young woman in the third row stood up, her resemblance to the ISS commander unmistakable. This was Emma, the 8-year-old who had given Shirley that precious hand-drawn picture 5 years ago. "Dr. Walsh," Shirley said with obvious pride, "please share your findings." Jennifer approached a second podium with the same quiet confidence her mother had shown in space. "Ladies and gentlemen, I've been analyzing orbital debris patterns and discovered evidence of deliberate manipulation. Someone has been using a network of microsatellites to nudge space debris into collision courses with active spacecraft." The auditorium erupted in shocked whispers. "The pattern is too precise to be natural," Jennifer continued. "Someone is weaponizing space junk, and their next target appears to be the new International Lunar Gateway Station." As the implications sank in, Shirley's secure communicator chimed with an emergency alert. She glanced at the message and felt her blood run cold. Phoenix Industries, the successor to Titan, has activated sleeper agents in 12 space agencies worldwide. The Lunar Gateway attack is scheduled for today at 14:30 Greenwich Mean Time. 6 hours from now. Shirley looked out at the 200 brilliant minds in front of her. Her protégés, her legacy, the future of scientific integrity. 5 years ago, she had been one person against a conspiracy. Today, she had an army. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her voice cutting through the chaos, "it appears our graduation exercise just became a live mission. Phoenix Industries has just declared war on human space exploration, and they've made one critical mistake. They've underestimated us." The next 6 hours transformed the Lawrence Institute into a global command center. Dr. Kim coordinated with Seoul to trace the microsatellite control signals. Dr. Hosson worked with Cairo to identify Phoenix Industries' financial backers. Dr. Santos partnered with Sao Paulo to analyze the orbital mechanics needed to prevent the collisions. Meanwhile, Shirley found herself on secure video calls with the same world leaders who had offered her jobs 5 years ago. But now, she wasn't asking for their permission. She was coordinating their response. "Administrator Richardson," she said to the NASA chief, "we need you to implement emergency maneuvers for all U.S. spacecraft in affected orbits. President Santos, we need executive authorization for the Space Force to disable the control satellites." "Miss Lawrence," President Santos replied, "you're asking me to authorize military action based on the research of graduate students." "Madam President," Shirley responded with quiet authority, 5 years ago, you trusted me to save 7 astronauts. Today, I'm asking you to trust me to save hundreds." As the clock ticked toward 14:30 Greenwich Mean Time, reports flooded in from around the world. Phoenix Industries operatives had been arrested in Moscow, Beijing, London, and Sydney. The microsatellite network had been traced and neutralized. The Lunar Gateway had successfully maneuvered to safety. But the most important victory came from an unexpected source. At 14:45 Greenwich Mean Time, 15 minutes after the planned attack, Shirley's secure line rang with a call from the International Criminal Court in The Hague. "Miss Lawrence, this is Chief Prosecutor Elena Martinez. I'm calling to inform you that based on evidence provided by the Lawrence Institute, we have just issued arrest warrants for the entire board of directors of Phoenix Industries. More importantly, we're announcing the creation of the world's first international space crimes tribunal, with the Lawrence Institute designated as its official investigative arm." As cheers erupted throughout the command center, Shirley felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see her grandmother, who had somehow made it through all the security to reach her. "Grandma, you shouldn't be in here." "Hush, child," her grandmother said with a smile. "I've been watching you save the world for 5 years. I think I've earned the right to be here for this one." As the immediate crisis passed, and the young scientists began celebrating their victory, Shirley stepped out onto the Institute's observation deck. Geneva spread out below her, peaceful and unaware of how close they'd come to disaster. Maya joined her, holding 2 cups of coffee in their familiar ritual. "So," Maya said, "what's next for the girl who was afraid to speak up in class?" Shirley smiled, thinking of Jennifer Walsh, of Dr. Kim, of all the brilliant young minds who were now carrying the torch of scientific integrity forward. "I think," she said quietly, "it's time to step back and let the next generation take the lead. The Lawrence Institute doesn't need me anymore. It needs them." She gestured back toward the command center, where 200 young scientists were already planning how to prevent the next conspiracy, how to protect the next generation of space exploration, how to ensure that truth and integrity would always triumph over greed and corruption. As if summoned by her words, Jennifer Walsh appeared on the observation deck, carrying a tablet and wearing the same determined expression Shirley remembered from her own student days. "Director Lawrence," Jennifer said formally, then broke into a grin. "Or should I say, former Director Lawrence? I have something to show you." She displayed her tablet, showing a comprehensive proposal for expanding the Institute's reach into ocean exploration, climate research, and biotechnology. "The board voted," Jennifer continued. "We want to offer you a new position, Founder Emeritus and Chief Mentor. No administrative duties, no bureaucracy. Just doing what you do best, finding brilliant minds and giving them the courage to speak up." Shirley looked at this young woman, who had once been a little girl thanking her for saving her mother, and realized that the scared student who had discovered NASA's error 8 years ago had become something she'd never imagined. Not just a hero, but a teacher of heroes. "On one condition," Shirley said with a smile. "The first thing we teach every new student is that there's no such thing as just a student. There are only brilliant minds waiting for the courage to change the world." Jennifer nodded solemnly. "Already in the curriculum, Director." As the sun set over Geneva, Shirley Lawrence, former student, former hero, now mentor to the future, looked up at the stars and smiled. Somewhere up there, astronauts were working safely because a terrified girl had once chosen courage over comfort. And tomorrow, in classrooms and laboratories around the world, new voices would speak up, new discoveries would be made, and new heroes would be born. The work would never be finished, but it would never be abandoned. 10 years after the Lawrence Institute's founding, the bronze statue outside the Institute bore a simple inscription: "To every student who sees what others miss, your voice matters." At its base, children from the Institute's global education program left flowers and drawings, continuing a tradition started by Emma Walsh years before. Inside, Director Jennifer Walsh addressed the latest class of young scientists, while in a small office overlooking the main hall, Shirley Lawrence, now known worldwide as the mother of scientific integrity, mentored a nervous 17-year-old who had just discovered what appeared to be flawed climate data. "Professor Lawrence," the student asked, "what if I'm wrong? What if they're right and I just don't understand?" Shirley smiled, remembering a frightened girl in a Stanford lecture hall who had asked herself the same question. "Then we'll learn something new," she replied gently. "But what if you're right? What if you've just discovered something that could save the world? Are you really willing to stay quiet and never know?" The student straightened her shoulders and nodded with newfound determination. Outside, the stars shone down on a world where young voices were heard, where truth mattered more than power, and where the courage of one student had become the foundation for generations of heroes yet to come.